1402, Jan Hus was appointed the pastor of Bethlehem Chapel in Prague, Czechoslovakia. And it was at that place that he began his journey, calling for the reformation of the church that ultimately ended by him being burned at the stake. You see, every morning he would step into the chapel and be confronted with the paintings on the walls that depicted the life of Jesus Christ. And he would contrast that with the behavior of the popes. The popes rode a horse. Christ would walk on dusty streets. Jesus washed the disciples' feet. The Pope preferred having his feet kissed. Hus was moved by the images of Christ, that he had no choice but to call to the spiritual leaders in his society and condemn their betrayal of those images. Hus expressed his conviction in De Ecclesia. They gather up briefly all that the Scripture says, and especially the gospel, which seems to indicate to them that they ought to be rich, live delicately, be famous in the world, and suffer no reproach for Christ. These sayings they ruminate over, proclaim aloud, and make known all too extensively. But whatever calls for the imitation of Christ as poverty, gentleness, humility, endurance, chastity, toil, or patience, these passages they suppress or gloss over at their pleasure, or expressly set aside as not pertaining to salvation. And the devil, who is the worst of sophists, leads them astray by their ignorance. I cite Hus's life and writings at the opening of this book and chapter because, as is the case in any call to the reform of the church, we must begin with the image of Christ. Any individual who seeks to reform his sinful state and come to salvation must first look to the image of Christ as their hope. Any follower of Jesus who desires to reflect and magnify the grace that brought them faith must look to the image of Christ as their pattern. And at a time when the church looks to correct its crooked path and return to the way of the cross, we must be brought to the indelible image of Jesus. This has always been true and always will be true.